what does it truly mean to win?
Mhm.
Sounds so simple, right? Victory, conquest.
Yeah.
But what if winning? What if it isn't what we think it is at all? What if it's something, I don't know, far deeper, far more expansive even, eternal?
That's a profound way to kick things off, actually,
Yeah.
because it leads us right into the layers of this single, really powerful Hebrew word, Netzach. And you're right, this concept stretches way beyond just, battles won. It covers meanings from victory and conquest, yeah, but all the way to eternity, continuity, and even, maybe surprisingly, the role of a musical conductor.
That's fascinating because, most of us hear victory and our minds instantly go to a clear winner, a loser, a battle fought, one side comes out on top.
Yeah.
And that's definitely one immediate aspect of Netzach, right?
Absolutely, that's the first layer.
So our deep dive today is really to unpack these incredibly rich layers of meaning. We're looking at the source material you've brought. And the goal, I think, is to see how understanding Netzach might fundamentally transform how we perceive conflict, maybe hope, even our own existence. It feels like connecting some very ancient wisdom to, well, challenges we face right now.
Indeed. And the source material outlines three core meanings. They're interconnected but also distinct, starting with that most common understanding you mentioned. The first is Netzach. That's precisely it. Victory or conquest, where one side, clearly wins over another in some kind of conflict.
Okay, so that's the obvious one, the immediate meaning. But you mentioned eternity and even music. How do those fit in? What's the next layer this word shows us?
Right. So the second meaning is Netzach itself, the same word, but here it means eternity. Think of something without end, continuous, like the phrase forever and ever. It describes a state of being that just is, without stopping. And then the third one, Menatzach, refers to someone who oversees or leads, kind of like a musical conductor guiding an orchestra, bringing different parts into harmony.
Wow. Okay, so victory, eternity, and conducting. That's quite a spectrum for just one word. What really stands out to me, though, is that tension between victory, where one side literally overpowers another, and eternity, which sounds continuous, boundless, maybe even unified. How can those seemingly opposite ideas live in the same word?
That tension is exactly where the deepest insights are hidden, I think. The source makes this crucial distinction. It's not just what victory is, but where it comes from. It talks about external victory versus internal victory. So external victory is what we usually see, right? Nations fighting, one wins. But this kind of victory is, well, by its very nature, it's temporal, it's temporary. Even if one nation completely, say, erases another from the map, the source argues the internal reality of that victory is still transient. It implies it could theoretically be overturned someday.
So even if it feels totally absolute in the moment, it's not actually permanent. It's more like a momentary advantage, maybe not a definitive forever kind of win.
Precisely. It's not forever. And the source uses this powerful phrase to illustrate it. 7 times a righteous person falls and rises. This really captures the nature of temporary wins and losses in our daily struggles. This kind of nitzach, this external temporary victory. It's not netzach in the sense of eternity. It's based on the temporal realities of this world, which the text even calls like a corridor or a temporary way station.
That makes a lot of sense. So if external victory is so fleeting, how does the source define a victory that actually lasts? Is it even possible to get something like that in this messy world we live in?
Yeah, that's the key question. And that's where internal victory comes into play. This victory, the source explains, emerges from a deep, eternal point within the human soul itself. When a person reveals this deep eternal core, their victory is of the nature of Netzach. It's truly eternal. Lasting, this is kind of hinted at in the phrase, Netzach Yisrael lo yeshaker. The eternity of Israel will not lie or deceive. Think about the constant battle inside us, right? Between the good inclination, the Yetzer Hatov, and the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. While we're here in this world, it feels like a constant back and forth. But the source says that ultimately, like in the end of days, God will actually slaughter the evil inclination. That is presented as an eternal victory, stemming from eternity itself, unlike the temporary wins and losses of this world.
That's a really powerful image. Slaughtered. So if evil is ultimately destined for that, and true victory comes from this eternal inner core, how does that distinction help us understand the nature of evil itself?
Yeah.
Is it fundamentally different from good in its essence?
It's absolutely fundamental according to this source. Evil, by its very essence, cannot achieve true Netzach, true eternal victory. Why? Because evil is fundamentally, it's not eternal. The source uses this fantastic analogy. Falsehood has no legs.
No legs.
Yeah, shkar and lo ragleim. It means falsehood or lies or evil. It lacks continuity. It can't advance, definitely. It reaches a certain point, and then it just
Yes.
stops. It's inherently temporary, like a path that just abruptly ends. It can't sustain itself.
So good, or truth. It has this inherent self-sustaining forward momentum that evil just doesn't have. It can seem powerful, but it can't actually last. It can't truly build something enduring.
Precisely. Good, or the positive force, it possesses two kinds of victory power. The temporal, worldly kind, yeah, but also the eternal kind. Evil, on the other hand, it only has the temporal kind. So when someone fights using their internal force of eternity, their coach Skute, they genuinely win in the long run because evil simply doesn't have that same lasting power. The source really drives this home by saying God will eventually slaughter the angel of death, meaning evil itself will ultimately cease to exist. It just cannot hold its ground against true eternity.
That's a profoundly hopeful message, isn't it? But, for many people, especially when they're facing overwhelming odds or maybe deep personal struggles, that feeling of despair,
Yeah.
it feels incredibly real. It feels justified. How does this idea of Netzach, of eternity, speak to that immediate, sometimes crushing feeling of this is hopeless or it's all over?
This is exactly where Netzach becomes like a direct antidote to despair. You know Rabbi Nachman of Breslov's famous saying, Ein Yaj Klal, there is no despair at all in the world. And the source explains his reasoning so beautifully. It says despair fundamentally comes from believing that something has a limit, an end. If you perceive an end point, you can despair about reaching it or about it ending right now or not working out.
Right. So if you think something can end, then you could despair when it seems like it is ending, or maybe not going the way you hope. It's like if you believe there is a finish line, you can despair if you feel you'll never reach it.
Exactly. That's the logic. However, if someone deeply grasps their internal fundamental reality as endless as truly eternal, then the source basically asks, where could despair possibly come from? Think about it. People despair over relationships ending or health failing or not finding a partner because they see these things as potentially having an end. But crucially, the source says you cannot despair of your own existence, your etzem metziut, your essential being. Even physical death is presented not as annihilation, but merely as a change of form. The core essence continues.
That's a really radical shift in perspective. The core insight is kind of mind-blowing. Despair only exists where we perceive an end. So by truly grasping the endless, eternal nature of our own being, we effectively inoculate ourselves against despair. It's a shift from this might end to I am endless.
Exactly. It's presented as the core life work, really.
So this isn't just a philosophical idea. It's like a practice, a way of being. Okay, so once we kind of grasp this internal power of being, this eternal core, how do we take that and extend it outwards? How do we use it to win our daily battles? The ones that seem so temporary and yet so all-consuming sometimes.
Right, that's the next crucial step. The source clarifies the relationship between existence Havaya and eternity Netzach. Existence is like the root power of your very being, your core self. Eternity, or Netzach, on the other hand, is about taking that core power and actively extending it outwards, using it to overcome external challenges. The source even likens Netzach to the right leg, Regal Yamin. Think of it as the forward-moving leg, the active one that propels you forward, leading things outward from the self. It symbolizes progress, leadership, action.
Okay, the right leg moving forward. That makes sense. So this internal endless power of being helps us beat despair internally. But how does that translate into tangible strength out in the world? Does it connect to something like certainty or conviction?
It does, very, very closely. The source introduces this intimate relationship between Netzach and Bidashon, which is often translated as trust or certainty. It makes a pretty bold claim. If a person is 100% certain they will win, even against a whole empire.
Wow, 100% certainty guarantees victory.
That's the idea presented. And conversely, the root of doubt Safik arises when you encounter a second force. When you turn to another or perceive multiplicity, two options, two sides. Doubt, by its nature, is the existence of two sides. It's a lack of singularity, of oneness.
And if doubt fragments us, pushes us away from that singularity, does this concept of Netzach, because it's linked to eternity, inherently push us towards unity, towards oneness?
Absolutely, that's a core connection. Our current world is described in the sources as alma de peruda, a world of separation. It's characterized by multiplicity, division, things being temporary. Temporary things always imply multiplicity. Contrast that with the future, eternal world, where the phrase is God is one and his name is one. That signifies ultimate unity. Eternal things, the source asserts, always imply oneness. So here's the really profound insight. Illuminating the power of eternity. and therefore your own essential being, outwards.
Hmm.
It means transforming the other by revealing unity. When you manage to enlighten your own eternal essence into the other, there's no longer opposition. You become one, in a sense.
Okay, wait, that's truly radical. That completely flips the script on what winning a conflict even means. If true victory means revealing unity, then what does that say about how we usually think about things like war and enemies? It almost sounds like the enemy is an illusion, or maybe just a temporary state.
It really does challenge our conventional understanding deeply. The source offers this revolutionary view on conflict. The true war, it suggests, isn't about conquest in the sense of separating winner and loser, not really. Instead, it's about revealing unity and eternity within the one you're fighting. It clarifies that famous phrase, "May sin cease from the earth and the wicked will be no more." The interpretation here is that the sin, the act, the negativity should cease, not the sinner. The sinner, as a created being, still holds that eternal spark. They are internal in essence. The sin, the negativity, that's what's temporary, like a stain or a form that can be changed.
So it's not about destroying the person, but transforming the negativity, the sin or evil within them. That's a really difficult distinction to hold on to in the heat of battle, though, isn't it?
It is incredibly difficult. But think of the analogy the source uses. A table that's disassembled to make a box. The wood, the components, they remain. Only their form changes. The goal, then, is to strip away the form of evil to reveal the inherent point of good underneath. It's not annihilation, it's transformation. Even a phrase like God will avenge their blood, Hashem yikum damam, is reinterpreted here not as literal revenge, but as nikeon, as cleansing. Cleansing from sin and evil to reveal the pure essence underneath.
Wow.
And this applies even to something called a milkamit mitzvah, a war of mitzvah, a commanded war. It seems like a contradiction, right? War implies separation. Mitzvah implies connection, command, drawing close to the divine. But the deeper meaning presented is that this is a war whose ultimate purpose is to bring peace. How? By illuminating the light of unity and the divine command into the battle itself, revealing God's oneness even within the conflict. The true war is actually fought to bring peace by revealing unity.
That's a profoundly different way to understand conflict. Okay, so bringing this down to earth a bit, how does this revolutionary concept apply to the everyday battles we all face? Whether it's, an argument with a spouse, a disagreement with a neighbor, friction with a boss, or even those internal struggles we have with ourselves. Because these are the wars we fight constantly.
It's highly practical, really. The source acknowledges, everyone faces battles. Nobody gets through life without conflict, whether it's big or small, external or internal. Now, the superficial view of fighting is usually destroy the enemy, make them lose, prove them wrong. But the deeper view, the one rooted in Netzach, is totally different. The goal becomes bring peace, reveal underlying unity, remove the obstacles to connection to love, even within the conflict itself.
So the intent behind the fight changes absolutely everything. If I'm fighting to make you lose versus fighting to reveal a deeper unity with you, the outcome, the energy, the whole nature of the fight is fundamentally different.
That's precisely it. If you fight aiming for the other person to lose, you're operating from that temporary worldly mindset. And guess what? Your victory, if you get it, will also be temporary. It won't last. But if your aim is to reveal the eternal Netzach within yourself and to somehow awaken it or reveal it within your opponent, if the ultimate goal is to unite, then you're fighting from the true point of Netzach, and your victory will be genuine, lasting, transformative. Unfortunately, the source suggests most people put their energy into making the other person lose, which actually just buries and diminishes the true Netzach power within themselves, too.
I was just thinking about that argument I had this morning. It feels so different now. If I'd approached it with this mindset, where the goal isn't to win the point, but somehow to reveal unity underneath the disagreement, the entire conversation might have shifted. It's hard work, but wow, potentially transformative.
It really is presented as the ultimate life's work. To constantly seek the eternal, the one, the creator, who was, is, and will be the truly eternal source of everything. This also sheds light on that verse, God will fight for you and you shall be silent. It doesn't necessarily mean do nothing. It implies fighting from the point of eternity, allowing the eternal God to fight through you. That ensures true, lasting victory. Because even in things we see as negative, the source says there are hidden sparks of holiness, Nitzachot shel kedusha, tiny remnants of their eternal good essence. So our fight isn't really against the being that holds the spark, but against the temporary form, the negativity that obscures it.
This makes me think about historical figures or leaders. Is there anyone in the tradition who particularly embodies this concept of Netzach, someone who really lived it out?
Absolutely. The figure most specifically associated with the trait of Netzach is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. He's seen as the root of all Israel, the faithful shepherd. And his role wasn't just about receiving the Torah at Sinai and transmitting laws, though that was crucial. It was also about transmitting this deep sense of Netzach, the concept of eternity, to the entire people. Think about how he's described at the end of his life. His eye was not dim, nor his vigor abated. It illustrates this eternal strength, this continuity.
So even after his physical passing, his essence, his light, his teaching, it continues to illuminate and unify. It's not limited by time or physical form.
That's precisely the point being made. There's a teaching that as the sun of one leader sets, the sun of another rises, signifying that Moses' light, his influence, his Netzach, never truly dimmed. His deepest role in this mystical understanding was to illuminate his own Anoki, his essential I am, his core being into the 600,000 souls of Israel, thereby bringing about unity. He embodied that eternal essence and projected it outwards, transforming those around him from within.
This whole deep dive into Netzach, it's really fundamentally flipped the script on what winning even means, hasn't it? It's shifted from temporary conquest to eternal transformation, from defeating an opponent to revealing an inherent unity. This isn't just abstract philosophy. It feels like a blueprint for how you could engage with pretty much every challenge in your life.
That's the crucial takeaway, I think. True victory isn't about crushing someone else. It's about revealing the inherent eternal unity that underlies all things. And our internal work, our real job, is to connect to our own eternal being, that Havaya, and learn to project that outwards. That's what transforms perceived conflict into an opportunity for deeper connection, for greater unity.
So for everyone listening, I really encourage you to reflect on your own daily struggles, those conflicts, big and small. What if, just maybe in your next difficult conversation or in that internal battle you're fighting, what if you sought not just to win in the usual sense, but to somehow reveal an underlying unity or find that eternal spark of good?
It really does change everything. And it leaves us with a pretty profound thought to ponder. If the ultimate war is actually the war to bring peace by illuminating the light of unity within the conflict itself, what does that mean for the very definition of strength in our world?
That's a thought that truly resonates. Keep digging, keep exploring these ideas, and keep seeking that deeper Netzach in your own life.